There we go.
Okay, this is a big one. We're changing out the RockShox Reba for the Wren fork. And I know you're all thinking, what is the Wren? I've never heard of them. Well, Wren is an awesome little company out of Southern California, and they make great components. There are many reasons to like this fork, but for me, the best attribute is the tunability. It has 2 air chambers to fine-tune your ride. It's also very durable and serviceable, and it has 110 millimeters of travel as opposed to the 100 millimeters on the Reba. I've been riding this fork for the past few months on much rougher terrain than the Divide, and it performs great. And the story about how this came to be is pretty cool. This past January on the Baja Divide, I met a crew of riders from Alaska. One of them was a friendly feller named Cameron who happens to work for Wren. He contacted me after I got back from the Divide and said that he'd like me to try out the Wren fork. I said we already have the Reba and it works fine. And he said, no dude, listen to me, this is way better. To make a long story short, he sent it, I tried it, Eddie tried it, and we love it. Since I'm relatively new to this fork, I invited Cameron to talk about why this fork is so awesome. Pretty much nobody knows about this fork. It's not one of the big names out there. I've been riding it for the past 3 months. I love it. There's some things that are a little bit different about it, and I would love for you to talk about it.
Yeah, the first thing you'll notice is that the fork is inverted or upside down, or as we call it, right side up. So when you flip a fork upside down, you'll notice that like motorcycles do this all the time. Most motorcycles, you'll see the fork, the stanchion, the part that moves up and down through the chassis is down low.
Yeah.
Well, there are just some inherent advantages to everyone who bikes when you set up a fork this way. You take the internals and you put that weight up on the top, and that means your lower weight is more minimal. So that's your unsprung weight. So what that means in reality, in layman's terms, is that the travel readily takes impacts more easily because it doesn't have all that weight to have to push through the system. So there's less weight for it to push through the system, so it likes to engage more readily. So that is really advantageous for people like us who are bike packers. This is going on the 600X, which is meant to be an adventure machine. You might go from single track to maybe a long section of gravel road, and your traditional fork might do everything you want it to do on the single track, but when you get to the gravel road, those smaller vibrations are just a little bit too small for it to pick up, for a traditional fork to want to engage with. And because our fork is inverted, you're able to better refine it for a wider variety of little bumps. So especially if you're doing, a 90-mile day on the Baja Divide, it's going to give you more comfortability through that spectrum of riding throughout the day.
And what I really like is you can turn the dial and make it stiff, and it's hard as a rock. It's just like a regular fork.
You'll see a lot of, you'll notice between Fox and RockShox and Cannondale and us and everybody, lockouts are not always created equal. And our lockout is rock solid. You can't move the fork. So if you're hitting pavement or whatnot, you're going to feel it, which is also, a really good boon to bike packers. There's a number of really unique things about this fork. First of all, if you are a bit of a tinkerer or you do your own work at home, this fork is entirely tunable with just layman's tools. If you go to a bike shop or if you've tried to change your bottom bracket or something like that, you realize there's like 1,000 different tools just to take a bottom bracket off. This fork can be disassembled with just basic sockets and wrenches, nothing special, which becomes increasingly more important if you're in, Baja, Mexico or South America, because you're not going to find
Uzbekistan.
Yeah. So no matter where you are, you can find the tools you need to fix it. We have distribution centers around the world, so we can get you parts really quick in the instance you do need to fix something. This is a damper. So this sits in the non-air side of the bike. And what's really interesting about our system is that there's no oil bath. So there's no like sitting reservoir of oil down in the fork leg. It's all inside this, which makes the servicing really easy. And it's one of the many steps we took to make our fork work all the way down to 30 below zero, because we do fat by forks as well. Getting a
Wait, say that again. How cold?
30 below zero.
30 below. Wow. Okay.
So, I've rode mine at 30 below zero. I live in Alaska. A lot of people, they don't need that. Probably very few of the 600X riders will be riding at 30 below. But, forks do stop. They have the different tendencies once you get below freezing. And then once you get below zero, a lot of forks just don't really function as they should at all. Combining the inverted fork technology and taking into account the ease of serviceability anywhere around the world, the final and probably one of the most important features of our fork for a bike packer is the twin air chambers that we have. Yep. So we have a upper and lower chamber and a moving piston on the inside. And that lower chamber allows you to adjust the travel stroke progression through the suspension. So on the 600X, there's 110 millimeters of travel.
Yep. And
you can adjust how that travel behaves through its stroke. So that allows you, by adjusting the air in the bottom of that fork, it allows you to say, I'm going to let the initial stroke be very soft, and I'm going to set the final stroke to be quite firm. Because when you're riding in, again, the Baja Divide like we were doing just last spring, as well as I do, that for the most part, you're hitting a lot of tiny bumps. And then all of a sudden you're barreling down some giant mountain, and you get to the bottom, and all of a sudden you got like small baby-sized boulders and holes that are, 1.5 feet deep all over the place. So, that's kind of your get out of jail free card. You've set your progression to be really aggressive at the very end. So you're saving that last little bit of travel for that, oh my God moment when you're coming into the, the baby boulders, and you just need that little bit of extra travel in the reserves.
Getting to know you better and getting to know Wren better, it seems that you really pride yourselves on helping your customers out. If anybody does have a problem, they can just contact you, not you specifically, but somebody on the team, and you'll work them through it, right?
Yeah, I will Skype with anybody who owns a fork or is even interested in getting a fork, just like this. The thing that brought me to work with Wren on these projects is because I'd never seen the owner of a company actively involving himself in every single client's world, figuring out what they're doing and what helps them. You don't see that from Fox. You don't see that from RockShots. It's not something in the industry we talk about as being a value that you're buying into. And frankly, I think it's one of the biggest values that you buy into.
It's an honor to be flying the Wren flag on the front of the 600X. You guys are awesome. I love having bottles on my front forks, and I wanted to make sure it worked out with this inverted setup. So I got out my hose clamps, clamped on some cages, put on my big cans, and there's plenty of clearance. And yes, it will come with the carbon bash guards and a shock pump.